and his discussed image represents possibly the first example of the postmodernity, which took off more early in Italy than in other countries. The Velasca Tower in Milan was able to transform by skyline of the city, daring to challenge the cathedral itself. Inspired by medieval towers, it is reinforced concrete structure, an evident depth to the architecture by Auguste Perret. The columns broaden outwards on the top, carrying out a block of dueling suspended between sky and earth. And then, 6. Technical abstraction and parametric architecture. Luigi Moretti demonstrated his ability to model the shapes of buildings as if they were abstract fragments of a gigantic sculpture. He also studied mathematical, architectural and urban planning relationship and proposed models for a stadium with curves that of the stands and moved perimeter calculated with algorithms, a very interesting path that was unfortunately interrupted. On the other hand, the Pirelli skyscraper, designed by Gio Ponti and Pierluigi Nervi, is a point of arrival of a exceptional quality that emphasizes the modernity of Milan. It is a sort of clever contrivance in which structure and architecture are developed together spontaneously, eliminating complication and complexity at all. The natural constructive energy of this tower lives in the strength of the diagonal outlines of the surface, a slender suspended roof at the top of the two narrow pillars opened in the slide, which allow the city atmosphere to freely flow like a soft wind. At the conclusion, beyond calculation toward imaginative form. At the end, a particular image of a church, where this research found his end, and probably another would be going to start. The St. John Church, built by Giovanni Michelucci on the Sun Highway, l'autostrada del Sole, near Florence, in the 16th. The Sun Highway was built at the beginning of the 60s across the entire peninsula of Italy, from north to south. Fiat, Pirelli, Agip, and Italcementi guided the business, and Italian engineers offered all of their talents to realize it. But just considering this gigantic road wall, with a great number of pass-over viaduct, tunnels, crossway for cars and pedestrians, motels and services area, it was a great check for the Italian school from the standpoint of the relationship between technique, architecture and landscape. This church was certainly the most unexpected and the most controversial building of the 60s. It is not difficult to sustain that this church were a work of art, but art is a really ambiguous theme. The concept was born from a weave of ideas, some of which are celebratory and other deeply human. A highway could be considered as a device of mechanical civilization, particularly at that time in Italy, the auto era, with a lot of productive, commercial, touristic opportunities, while a church must be intended first of all as a spiritual experience. Nevertheless, the Sun Highway had a social and political content too, a definitive fusion of Italians into a single people, as it was written representing the church in the magazine of Autostrade in March 64. Moreover, St. John Church was a memorial of the workers who died in the work site from Milan to Naples in building the highway. Those were the contents that the church had to embody. Michelucci understood all these ways from the beginning and designed the church as a meeting place for men of all countries. He immediately thought the church as a construction fused together in a continuum with the surrounding, almost building without end, open, suggesting the impulse to stop without breaking the flow of the traffic. The collaboration between artisans, architect, and industrial work suggested a methodological change, a professional challenge in order to identify new tools of communication and to find an incisive mark, quite a brand. Michelucci suggested the theme of the tent, understood as a transitory dwelling, a few years earlier investigated by Hans Scharoun. The heritage of Expressionism is evident. The church was imagined informally, sketched in drawing that mixed the remains of fossilized wood and the sinuosity of draping fabrics in a mobile profile, modeled in reinforced concrete, that material most suited for sculpture, as Le Corbusier had already demonstrated in Ronchamp. That are the drawings of the works of Michelucci. Calculation, traditional materials and new materials. A fossil tree and a tent, eternity and ephemeral. Archaic, the source of the moment. It could be said that this church went beyond a pure static coherence of structure, that the image wins over the construction, and that the cemented pillars which support the cubing steeps who play out by contrast and not by an organic fusion, in terms of space and in terms of material. The walls made with golden stone, put in an intentional irregular manner, and the smooth vaulted ceiling in reinforced concrete, the tent. That caused, however, a sense of mysticism, perceived as an astonishing effect. And this effect is continuously supported by the artistic works of the sculptors who shaped the Bible themes collected in the ambulatories and in the stained glass windows. That is true. We are beyond all possible coherence. Architecture and static structure were constantly interrupted, following a logic that may be only intuitively understood, subjugated to the strength of the concept. That's the reason why it could be said that here a chapter of the convergent method between Italian engineers and architects found their own limits. All the buildings which I have already spoken about make it evident how construction method, spatial ideas, calculation tools and sensitivity for materials, both new and traditional, contribute in defining the characteristics of architecture, which sometimes become a masterpiece. They are components that may never be separated. Only in this way the results, though complex, may be scientifically convincing and aesthetically pleasing. This is the way because of Italian architecture and engineers' research were distinguished in the international scene in the 50s and in the 60s of the last century. Still today, it offers us a great lesson. Thank you for listening.